Well, tonight I was going to be kind of a wordsmith, I guess. Paul will enjoy this one. I want to talk about two words that is very common in the Christian realm, I guess. Commitment and surrender. It was kind of amazing this week. I knew I was going to be having a devotional tonight, so I was kind of racking my brain thinking, what could I get one on that would be something that would mean something. And through my travels to horses and that, I had the radio on and flipping through channels and happened to come across one that I had no idea who was doing it or anything, but there was two words that was brought up: commitment and surrender. And he was talking, and I happened to look it up online, and I don't know how I did it, but it actually came up online. I got to see the whole thing. But there was a preacher in Romania, and he was asked a question. And of course, they're persecuted and under communist rule over there and everything. And he was one that had struggled through a lot of that. And he was asked a question. He said, "Well." Where is it here? How would you describe American Christianity? How would you describe it in one word? And he said, commitment. But he said that's not really a very positive thing, because it actually should be replaced by surrender. And he has a point. Commitment, as we look in the dictionary, and we look at it, it's a pledge or a promise to do something. We're dedicated to a cause. Surrender is yielding to a power, control, or possession, giving up completely. Now you may say, well, they're pretty close. There's one major difference, though. Commitment, we still have control. We still have control of commitment. We don't surrender. And then I was reading another devotional here this morning and happened to just have a few more minutes, and I read a couple of days ahead. And it was talking about Abraham, when God told him to take his boy, the one that was promised to him, the one he waited so long for, the one that said would be the seed of all the generations to come. God said, take your boy up on the mountain and sacrifice him. Abraham was committed to doing what God wanted to do. Committed. The boy carried the wood, he got him up there. He was committed enough to strap him to the altar, tie him to the altar. But he didn't have to do it. He could have said, you know what, I've gone this far, God, and it don't look good. So I'm going to take him back home. But he surrendered. He surrendered his son. And it's at that point, not any time before, at that point, another sacrifice was given. I think of Jesus in the garden. Took his disciples with him. He goes there and he prays, Lord, not my will, but yours be done. He was committed. He had a job to do. And as a man, he was committed to that job. He was committed to doing what he had to do. He goes back and his disciples are sleeping. What's going on here? But in Matthew 26, verse 50, it kind of culminates. When the guards come with Judas, Jesus is arrested. In verse 50, Jesus replied, this is after Judas came up and kissed him. He said, greetings, Rabbi. Betrayed him. Jesus replied, "Friend, do what you came for." He surrendered. Now, as it says, we could read on up there before, and he could have called, let's see, well, he'd be in 53. "Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 10 legions of angels?" He could have called. He could have been saved from the torture, from the ridicule. But what did he do? He surrendered. He surrendered. We can commit to reading our Bible once a year, giving, attending diligently. We can commit to a lot of things, but we're still in control. When we surrender. You know, we've got a mission statement, very good, or a vision statement. And we're going to be getting a mission statement here going, and we're going to be enacting things. And we can say we're committed to doing this. But until we surrender and let God have His way with what we're going to do, it's still under our control. We're not really letting Him work. Ephesians 2, verse 10. We are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works. Okay, if we stop there, that'd be great. But we read on. And it says, which God prepared in advance for us to do. He already has prepared the work for us to do. He created us, and He already had the work designed. It's not up to us to figure out what the work is. He's already got it created. We need to surrender to that work. I think too many times we do, as humans, we like to be in control. I mean, me and Paul know what that's like. We want to have everything in order. It's going to happen this way. And we've already got every scenario figured out what we're going to do if something happens different. That's not the way God works. With us, He wants to put us in whatever situation He wants us in. How many trials and tribulations have we been in and thinking, what in the world is going on? I have no control over this. I don't know how it's going to turn out. And yet when we look back with 2020 vision, we say, God was in full control of that. And I learned something from that. And I am better for it. My life has been purified more. When we surrender, and there's so many places in the Bible that tells us that we are to be servants, bondservants, slaves. That's yielding to the Master. That's surrendering to whatever the Master says for us to do. Are we truly slaves? Are we truly bondservants? Or do we want to have a say? I don't know of any slave that really has any say in what the Master says. He does what He says. It's not, well, I don't think I ought to be doing it that way. As humans, that's the way we like to treat God. Well, God, I don't like the way that outcome is coming around, so I'd like to do it this way. That's not surrendering. We may be committed to a good work, but it's not surrendering to His work. In Proverbs 3:5 it says, trust in the Lord with all of your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Boy, that is difficult. Very difficult. Because as we grow older and we seem to mature, we think that we know We think that we understand these situations. We think we got it all down pat. That has been pointed out to me, I don't know how many times, and most recently when we have acquired another kid. I don't know it. I don't know it. I'm at a loss sometimes completely of knowing what's the next move. And I can fuss and stew for 2 or 3 days on it and figure out, well, this is what's got to happen. But yet my way is not going to work. And I try my best to try to figure it out, and it's not going to work. I have to realize I have to surrender. I have to give up any thought process that I have and say, Lord, I trust you completely. You know what the storm is that I'm in. You know what the outcome is already. I have to trust that you are going to get me through this in a way that I will learn something. That honor and glory will be brought to your name. And that your kingdom will advance. In some way, you've got it worked out that I don't understand. And this happens daily in our life. This is not something we say, well, tomorrow I'm going to surrender to it, but today I'm still going to hang on to what I know I want. And then later on, well, you know, it's just not working out very good. This is a little too difficult, so I think I'm going to have to take matters in my own hand and try to get me out of this mess. Slaves don't have that choice. Bondservants don't have that choice. They have to follow the master's rules. I often think of that song, I Surrender All. 662. Do we truly surrender all? When we become Christian? You know, there have been a lot of things that's been talked about in the last few weeks in our sermons, in our Revelation study, of what we're to be as Christians, how we're to act, what is our responsibilities, obeying His commands, doing what is right, helping others to be reached by the gospel, helping our fellow Christian through difficult times. All of these things are what we need to be doing and be committed to doing that. But the first thing we have to do is surrender. Because if we don't surrender, the commitment stuff is not going to be not going to mean that much. But when we surrender, the commitment part is so much easier, and we see what God has in mind for us. So we think about these two words. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be committed to things. I think we just need to flip-flop those and put surrendering to Christ and to God first. Then all these commitments will be so much easier because we're in total agreement with God. It's not a conflict of our mind and our thoughts in conflict with God's. When we have His mindset in mind, then all these commitments are so much easier. So if there's anyone that needs to make any kind of decision tonight, as we stand and sing page 662, all to Jesus I surrender.